Yeah,
Hi.
I see. Hi. I will prepare. You already can share your screen.
Okay, sure.
And guys, we can start, I think. I don't see your slides.
No, it's coming.
Okay.
Should be there anytime.
Oh, super. Okay. We are looking forward to listening your talk and applaud. Okay, you can start and I will switch on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, good evening and good afternoon. It's good afternoon for me. My name is Maximiliano. Max is fine. I know it's a long name. I will take probably 40 or 45 minutes to talk about PWAs, progressive web apps, and the cheat sheet for 2020. So because I'm in full screen right now, I don't know if you're asking any question on the chat. So we will take some minutes at the end. Okay, so you have a conversation if you have any question on any of the topics I will share with you. So really quickly, I'm a mobile web developer. I've been doing web development for 25 years, roughly. Yesterday, it was exactly 20 years since I started doing mobile apps. So I've been doing mobile apps for 20 years. Okay, so of course that means before the iPhone, before the smartphones era, and before many things that we can talk these days. And I started with this browser. Okay, so as a web developer, I started using Netscape. That's why you see Netscape on the screen. When there is no pandemic, I'm a frequent flyer. In fact, this is the first time I'm here at home. I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina. This is the first time I've been here at home for 6 months. Because of the pandemic, of course, I'm in quarantine at home. But it was 12 years ago, last time I've been at home for 6 months. Anyway, hope to visit you anytime soon, hopefully. I don't know, maybe later this year, maybe next year. We'll see. So I've been authoring several books in the past years as well. The last 2 books I have are High Performance Mobile Web and Hacking Web Performance, 2 of the topics of PWAs as well. And I've been doing training and consulting all over the world for a lot of years on different topics, mainly on the mobile space, PWA, and web performance. You can find a lot of contents of my authority on different publishers, LinkedIn Learning, Safari, or Pluralsight, for example, where you can find my latest books on PWAs, and there are one coming as well, and another one that I need to finish in the next month. So we're going to talk about PWAs, progressive web apps. So the first thing that I want to do is, just in case you're here and you heard the term, but you don't exactly know what that means, I will do a very quick summary, and then I will show you that cheat sheet that I was promising. That means, what do we need to do this year to actually create a good PWA experience? So first, PWA. So I authored this article, the cover article of Then magazine that was from last year, but I really like the design of the cover. That idea that actually PWA is the new or the current DNA of the web. And I think that's a nice definition. It's a graphical definition of what PWA is. It's actually the current state or the current DNA of the web platform. And unfortunately, it's an open definition. Unfortunately, because we don't know exactly what it is. Okay, we know when we see a PWA, we know it's a PWA, but it's hard to define when a website or a web app actually becomes a PWA. So it was originally created by Google, the definition, and then it's embraced today by most companies. But it's basically an app built with web technologies, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Angular, Vue, or wherever you're using, wherever stack you're using. It should work fast while online or offline, and it can also be installed on different platforms. And that's probably the new part, being offline and being installed. And after it's installed, it's offering an experience, wherever that means on every OS. So it's not a browser-based experience anymore. It's actually an app. And this is ideal for all those apps out there that just consume web content or web services. So if you have a native app on Android or iOS, and the app is just consuming web content, and if you think about that, there are a lot of apps out there that are just consuming JSONs from a server, and that's all. In this case, we don't actually need to create native apps. We already have a platform for doing that properly, and that's a browser. Well, but now the problem with the browser is that it was actually a box, and we couldn't get out of the browser. Well, now we can with the PWA platform. So it's a web app. On top of the web app, we're adding something known as a service worker that is a component of a PWA that will actually serve the files of your web app locally from the device, so it doesn't need a web server. And then we have a distribution channel that it can be the browser, it can be the App Store, or it can be an enterprise distribution channel. We can discuss that later if you want. So when we're talking about app development approaches today, we have native SDKs, web development. Okay, and native SDKs will create apps for one particular device, like Swift for iOS or Kotlin and Java for Android. Web development, that is currently, it has been doing browser-based apps for a while. And of course, we have some hybrid approaches in the middle, in the past years, where you can actually deploy device-based apps from web development as well, including things like React Native or even Apache Cordova or PhoneGap. So different hybrid approaches where you mix a little of web development with native SDKs. But when you think about PWAs, where is the PWA in this diagram? Well, it's in web development. There is no native SDK involved as with React Native or Microsoft Xamarin. So in the PWA, we are on the web development side, and we are, of course, doing browser-based apps with the addition of device-based app as well. And that's the new part. It's not just for the browser. We can actually create device experiences that are standalone and they look like any other app in the system. Right now, it's difficult to actually count how many PWAs out there. This is like the only resource that I found so far from Diego from Samsung. So he mentioned a few months ago, before pandemic, where we were happy on taking some beers with friends, that roughly 20 million different PWAs were installed from 80,000 domains. And domains, it's not exactly the PWA, so we can have more than one PWA per domain. But it's kind of a rough idea of how many PWAs are out there. So just to show you a quick example, I'm pretty sure that you've seen this before. PWA support on mobile, for example, on Android, you install, this is the JSConf PWA. You install that from the browser. And for example, from Chrome, you add a PWA to the home screen, and then you have a full screen standalone experience. And from an OS point of view, it looks like the JSConf app and not a browser app. And the JSConf icon appears as any other icon in the system. Okay, so it's also available on iOS. So if you have an iPhone, for example, I'm not sure if you know Tinder. It's not the best time for Tinder, but for at least for in-person meetings. But if you're on Tinder.com, you can actually add it to the home screen on iOS, and it would install the Tinder icon. And maybe you're thinking, oh, that's just a shortcut to the website. But when you open that, you can see it's actually the Tinder app. So it looks like a Tinder app, and it's currently being executed outside of Safari. Okay. Finally, you also have PWA support on feature phones. They're mostly on Southeast Asia and some African countries. It was supposed to come to Latin America, but it's not yet here, that platform. Also today, we have PWA support on desktop, and this is pretty cool. So that's the Starbucks application. That's the Starbucks application that works on US, UK, and one more country. I'm not sure which one. I think Canada. So I think it's not going for Germany or anyway, but it's starbucks.com. In fact, it's app.start.com, that's the PWA. And you can install it on desktop, and that's Chromebooks, Windows 10, Windows 7, 8, macOS, and Linux. And then it looks like any app installed in the system, so it's pretty cool. So this is, for example, Windows 10, and you can install Trivago. And then it looks like any app on Windows. It appears in the start menu or start screen as any app. Okay, now we have the Trivago app installed. So today, installation can happen in 86% of your visitors, which is actually pretty good. So in fact, if we get deeper into those numbers, in a browser with offline and performance, 93% of your users are currently supporting offline for your app and performance, so that your app will actually perform really fast, but not installation, okay? And by the way, this is 93% worldwide. If you narrow these numbers to specific countries or to specific regions, such as Western Europe, the data is different, so it's probably 98%. And then 86% of your visitors can actually install the app from there. So there are still a couple of users that cannot install the app, but they can actually use the app from the browser anyway. That's the advantage of a PWA. In fact, talking about COVID-19 apps, that it's something that is appearing on every country right now. So I'm typically advocating over using the PWA platform against using native platform for the governments to create COVID-19 apps, because there are a lot of concerns about privacy, about geolocation, and the PWA platform is actually good enough, because also it will target 100% of users, no matter the device the users have. Even if they have a very old device, they can still use the web, so the browser, to use the app. Also, we know that we are under the umbrella of the browser in terms of security and privacy. Yeah, it can get your location if the user accepts, if you as a user accepts that permission, but it cannot actually read your geolocation in the background or do anything else. Okay, so there are no support or plans to support PWAs right now on the web view, and that's basically Facebook mainly, so to give you an idea. So when you're on Facebook and you click on a link, that link is not actually being rendered in the browser, but inside what Facebook named the Facebook mobile browser. And PWAs are not supported there. Yeah, it will work as a website, but not as an install experience, okay? So that was the introduction. Remember that if you have any question on this intro, just use the chat, and after my presentation, we can go over all these questions. So cheat sheet. So what do we need to do to create the proper experience this year in terms of PWAs? So let's start talking about the app lifecycle. So we need to understand that today we are not actually creating websites. We are creating apps. And these apps will use the lifecycle of the operating system that is not the lifecycle that we were used to in the browser. For example, I will continue talking about the JSConf PWA. So when you open the PWA, the app loads. Okay, that's the normal onload or classic event in JavaScript. At one point, what happens if the app goes to the background, such as you press the home screen? Well, now you can listen for an event, visibility change. Okay, that's also available for tabs in the browser as well. But the question is, after a while, the app might be suspended. That is, there is no more memory on the phone, so there is memory pressure, and the phone will just kill your app from memory. So Chrome today will actually fire an event, freeze, so you know that your app will be suspended. That means, let me explain this in a different way. When you are in the background, you might be executing code or not. You will probably execute code for just a couple of seconds, and after a couple of seconds, you will be in this frozen state. So the freeze event will be fired, and that's like your last dinner, meaning that If you want to store something, if you want to store the current state of your app, or if the user was typing something and you want to actually save that, that's your moment, the freeze event. Because when the user goes back to the app, if the app is still in memory, well, that's simple. Okay, it's just going to defreeze. Okay, freeze means that there is no execution anymore. So it's still in memory, but there is no CPU usage, so no execution. So in this case, when you go back to the app, a resume event will be fired, and then another visibility change event. But there is another option. For example, that's in Berlin, by the way, I think. When you are recording a video or something like that, that is taking a lot of memory from your phone, and your PWA is in the background, the PWA will be discarded. In this case, it's not frozen anymore. Now you're out of memory. So it's killing the whole process because you're actually shooting a video, and that's actually taking all the resources from the phone. So in that case, when you go back to the app, it will be a normal load. But now we have a Boolean attribute that we can query. Its document was discarded. Document was discarded will give you true if, in this case, we are going back to an app that was in memory, but now it was discarded by the OS. And then you can restore the state. That, I mean, you can use IndexedDB or local storage to store the state, okay? But it's important to understand the life cycle because this is actually new for most JavaScript developers. Unfortunately, this is today not working on iOS. So the whole diagram that I mentioned before, it's mostly happening on Android. It's also happening on desktop, to be honest, but on desktop, we don't have so many problems with resources when we have apps in the background. So it's typically happening on Android. And on iOS, the lifecycle can be really complex. No worry, don't worry, I'm not going to explain the diagram. I'm just going to tell you this, that for iOS, we should always provide a reload action within your UI. Because sometimes you are going to go back to the app will be also defreeze, and maybe the state is actually outdated. Okay, so we actually need to restart the app. And also, we should provide full navigation apart from gestures, such as a back button, a visible back button on the screen, because on iOS, we don't have a physical back button like we do on Android. So just remember that. And if you have already developed the PWA, I'm pretty sure you know that the resources of the app, such as your JavaScript files, are currently being served by the server. And there's sometimes the problem that you see on the screen, that the files are not there. The resources are not there. You say, what's going on? I already cached the files while the user is offline now, and I want to provide the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript file for my PWA, but for some reason I'm seeing this message, okay, that this site can't be reached. So when you're offline, I'm not sure if you will see that in my camera, but I have this little cup here, coffee cup, with the T-Rex from Chrome. It's pretty cool. But when you are offline, we don't want to see T-Rex in our PWA. So one of the things that you can do is you can request persistent storage. This happens most of the time because your cache can be cleared by the browser. If there is a storage pressure, or if you haven't used your PWA for, I don't know, 2 weeks or something like that, the browser can say, there are like a couple of megabytes here that we can clear from the cache. But then when the user opens your PWA, while she's offline, we have a problem because the files are not there anymore. Well, with this simple API, you can actually request persistent storage. And in this case, the browser will not delete your resources, even if there is storage pressure or memory pressure or for any reason. Okay, it will persist your data. So the browser will grant you access to this API if your site is bookmarked, if it has high site engagement, if the site has been added to the home screen, and that's basically a PWA. So if the user has installed the PWA, from the browser, then you will be granted access to the persistent store API. Also have push notifications enabled. So that was for the life cycle. Okay, so things that we need to do to have a proper experience for our PWA. Now let's talk about platform integration. So how we can integrate our web content within the platform, within the OS. So first, something that you need to start looking at is web authentication. With Web Authentication API, you can actually log in your users taking credentials from the browser. Okay, for example, if you're using Chrome, you can actually take credentials from the Google account that the user is logged in. If that happens, then it will be a one-click login. So there is no need for typing a password. Even if there is, if you have a fingertip sensor in the phone, you can use that sensor to actually log in the user. So for example, this is 1-800-Flowers. I can actually log in automatically as Maximiliano, as myself, within the PWA without actually signing in previously on this website. Okay. Also, when on iPhone, there is a JavaScript API. It's a sign in with Apple JavaScript API, where you can actually use this for Mac users on Safari only, or for iOS users or iPadOS users. In this case, it will be a one-click sign-in process. The user won't need to type anything. It will just be automatic, and it will use Face ID or Touch ID based on the device. If you have been using PWA Builder, or even if you have not using PWA Builder, this is an open source project from Microsoft. They do have a PWA auth web component that will solve the problem, and it will use the API for you. So it's a web component. You just import that web component. It's compatible with plain vanilla JavaScript or with React or Angular, for example. And it will offer you an authentication flow process for most providers. Share API, this is another way to integrate with the system. It will let you share content from your app. It's pretty simple. It's navigator.jr, and you pass a JSON with some metadata. So it's actually not complicated. And it will actually trigger the native share dialog, for example, in this case on iOS. Also works on Android and on some desktop operating systems as well. Not every desktop OS has a share system. On Android, it's important to understand that we do have something known as WebAPK. When you have an Android phone and you're installing a PWA from Chrome, or when you have a Samsung device, like a Galaxy S20, and you are browsing the web from the Samsung Internet browser, so and you install the PWA, an APK is being generated. For those of you new to Android, an APK is the native package container format that Android uses. So it's like a native app. This APK, it's generated by the cloud, in this case by Google Cloud, and it's signed by the Play Store. And your phone will actually install an APK. So we actually don't see the APK and cannot manage or get that APK, but the user will get it. That's the important part. And it will install the app with full permissions within the OS, with the same permissions as the browser, but full permission in terms of integration with the OS. So that means that, for example, your app will appear in the list of installed apps, for example, the JSConf Europe website. Even it says that it was installed from the Google Play Store, which is actually not true because it's not in the Play Store, okay? But because it was signed by the Play Store, the phone thinks that the APK came from there. The same, as I mentioned before, works with Samsung devices. In this case, instead of being signed by Play Store, it's signed by Samsung Apps. That's the store from Samsung. Okay. So when you have WebAPK, what will happen is that it contains only the app's name, the icon, and the URL. So there is no actually JavaScript code in that APK. That JavaScript code or HTML will be served by the service worker. The APK will be installed silently, so you won't see any confirmation dialog from the Play Store or anything that lets you accept or there is terms and conditions, nothing like that. It will be installed silently by Chrome. Then your PWA will go to the home screen and also to the launcher. The launcher is where all the apps resides. You need a Google Chrome. I mean, if you're using Firefox on Android, this is not going to work, and you will just receive a shortcut to your PWA, or Samsung Internet on Samsung devices, as I mentioned before. When you have your icons with WebAPK, you will see, for example, if you look at the HTML logo, HTML5 logo there, you will see that everywhere. So that HTML5 logo, it's actually everywhere. So something that you can do also today with PWAs and the icon, it's batching. This is an API that is currently being served with the last version of Chrome for desktop and also for Android. So this is not on iOS yet. It will let you add these little numbers, like besides the icon, or on some Android devices, it will be a dot, specifying that there is something new on that particular PWA. And you can change that badge from JavaScript. It can be a service worker, for example, with a push message, or just with any JavaScript API. It can be a number or just a dot. Microsoft is also playing with icons, okay, for Windows only. So you can actually have like a weather application that can define a little icon with the current weather, like sunny or snow or something like that. Cool. So we mentioned that PWAs are currently also available on desktop computers or desktop devices. Well, we need to understand that now we are on desktop. We have something different. For example, this is actually Google Drive on desktop. I can actually open a new window. So when you have a PWA, you can actually open more than one window for the same PWA. This is like opening new tabs, okay, in the browser. But now this is possible on apps, only on desktop. Because we are talking about Windows, you can actually use very old APIs from JavaScript, like resize to or move to, where you can actually position and resize each window wherever you want on the screen. Okay, so this is actually pretty neat. And if you're using React, you can create React or Angular, not just React. You can create like a component that will set up this at the top level. There are some proposals to actually manage multiple windows. Today, you can use the service workers and the message API to control multiple windows, like to know what's going on or to send messages between windows. But as I was mentioning, the future looks promising because we have a new mode that is probably coming, where you can actually create like your own app, can also have tabs that you can see on the screen. This is actually available today in Chromium, so Chrome and Edge. It's known as Desktop PWA Tab Strips. That's the name. If you enable this, you can actually play with this JavaScript API. That is an experiment, so it's not completely clear if this is going to be the final API. But for example, Twitter, the Twitter PWA has been playing with this. This is how the Twitter PWA looks like on Windows when you have tab strips enabled. Okay, so you have your own browser if you want with your own tab management APIs. And now we have foldable devices as well. You know, the old phone. Now we have these old-fashioned little phones like the Motorola Razr, or we have also like tablets that you can open like a book. We do have some specs coming that right now are in draft, such as Windows Segments Enumeration API that will let you do some query and decide the window or the part of the foldable that you want to use for your user interface. And also you have some new CSS media queries that you will use, or you can use if you want to know where you are on double device. So on iOS, when you search for PWAs on iOS, you will see that the first answer, the second answer, also the third answer, and the snippet you see on the right are articles that I authored. Okay, so those are my articles. So I'm not saying this because of trying to make publicity of myself. I'm just saying that Apple has a problem here. Apple has never used the term PWA, and they don't want to use the term PWA. So they didn't document anything on PWAs. That doesn't mean that PWAs are working on iOS, because they are working on iOS with probably less features or less abilities, but they are working on iOS. It's unfortunate that the only resources that you will find are from my hands, because I'm not an Apple employee and I'm not looking for that anyway. But just have in mind that this is the current situation on iOS. So sometimes it's actually not so simple. Okay, so a little bit of installation or distribution of the app. That's the last section that I have here for you today. So if you want to distribute your PWA, today you have three models. We have the browser, and that's the most typical scenario that we know these days. Well, you are on Android, you go add to home screen. On iOS, you go and add to home screen. Or desktop, you go and install the PWA. But also we can have enterprise distribution and also the App Store. So on all the distribution models, we are not changing how app resources are being installed and updated. It's always the service worker, the component responsible for serving all the resources of our app. So even if you are going to the App Store, at least on the Play Store, we are not going to serve any code. Okay, so we have a couple of methods for packaging apps. We have native apps. On a native app, you're actually serving all your content inside. Hybrid apps, such as Apache Cordova or Ionic apps. In this case, you're actually also in your package adding all your JavaScript code, and the package goes to the store. But now we also have PWA launchers. PWA launchers are actually empty boxes. Okay, so there is no JavaScript code inside, no code at all. It's just metadata. It's just an icon, a name, and a URL. And when you install that launcher from any method, then you open that, and it's going to be the service worker or the web platform, the one that is going to cache, download, and cache the resources. So from the three main components of a PWA, the web app, the service worker, and the distribution channel, the PWA launcher, it's in the distribution channel. We still have the service worker and the web app as we know. The launcher, as I mentioned before, is just the icon, the name, metadata, and the start URL of your PWA. That's all. There will be no resources. Okay? And in terms of app stores, some users might look for your app there. I mean, it's common. Because you want to increase reach, you want to use native features, you want to monetize your app, but it's completely optional. Okay, you will need a publisher account, pay for that publisher account, and there are a lot of rules that you must comply with when you're going to the store. Advantages: the initial download size compared with the native app, it's really small. It's less than 1 megabyte. Okay. You are going to share the session with the browser. So I'm talking about Play Store mainly here. So if the user is already logged in your website, it will be already logged in the app automatically. One of the most important advantages from my point of view is the transparent update model. Every time you make a change in your builds, in your JavaScript code, you actually don't choose of the app, because the service worker will just be responsible of downloading the new files transparent to the user. So like breaking the store update mechanism. Right now, the stores compatible are the Google Play Store, the Samsung Galaxy Store, the Microsoft Store, and the Kai Store. These stores are all compatible with PWA launchers. Okay. The only one that are not compatible with this are Apple App Stores, both for iOS and macOS. In this case, you must provide a hybrid package, and in that case, you actually need to put in the box all your JavaScript code. So, for example, I mentioned before 1-800-Flowers. They used to have a native Android app of about 20 megabytes, and they replaced that native app with a PWA. And they even been in top 5 in trending apps, and it was actually a PWA. They were replaced by the PWA that was less than 1 megabyte. There are other PWAs as well that were actually promoted by Chrome, such as Oyo Lite. Okay, where you can see on the screen the advantages. Okay, so users typically don't realize it's a PWA, but they shouldn't care anyway. But if the app is nice and it looks good, it has a good experience, it doesn't matter if it's native or a PWA. Okay, the store users won't realize that there is any difference. And right now for Samsung, you can send an email, and they have a web app sections within the Samsung store, and they will promote your PWAs. And finally, Google, this is actually from last month, Google is replacing some Android apps in Chrome OS as well with PWAs. So now in the Play Store on Chromebooks, you will find PWAs as well, directly from there. Okay, cool. So we were talking about PWA stores, how to create these launchers for Android. We have 2 ways. You can do it manually. Also, there is a CLI experimental tool from Chrome. It's called Bubble Wrap. From the command line, you can actually create your launcher. You have pwabuilder.com, the same I mentioned before, where you can create that package. And PWAPK is another online free tool that you can use. You just need to be very careful, because when you're going to the store, there are some rules. Okay, so be careful. For example, there is a PWA known as YP. I can't see you right now, your faces, so I don't know if you're recognizing the icon or not. But this is actually the PWA for YouPorn. If they have a PWA, okay, and yeah, they have a problem. They cannot go to the store. This is not accepted on the store. So I'm just saying here that be careful, because not every app or every PWA is actually suitable for the store. Even you don't need to go to porn. For example, this is a tweet from last month. Last month, where someone was trying to publish a PWA in the store that is for childs. Okay, it's for a child, for children apps. They are not accepting children apps to use the PWA platform, at least today. This is because we can actually change the app from the server. So there is a security or a privacy risk. So that's why the store is actually not accepting apps that are targeting children to use this platform. Okay, so I think that's all I have for you. So the cheat sheet, we first need a basic PWA. We need to cover the app lifecycle. We need to be aware of the app lifecycle. Okay, that's important. We need to integrate with the platform with several techniques that we mentioned. And then we can provide a good installation experience. So this is like the quick cheat sheet that I have for this year to provide a good PWA. So after saying that, I will stop sharing. Cool. Let's see if we have any questions. Do we have any questions? Let's see.
Yeah, we have some questions.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. I made some tweets about your talk. Super. And the first questions which I saw in the chat, it was from Thibaut. He was asked about PWA in app stores, but later you explained that yes, PWA in app stores doesn't work so easy.
So yeah, just to clarify that, you can submit PWAs on the App Store officially on the Play Store, on the Microsoft Store, on the Samsung Galaxy Store, and on the iOS Store. For iOS and Mac, it's not actually the PWA. You need to create a hybrid. So you need to actually serve all your files from in the package, not from a web server.
Okay. Now Thibaut is writing, but I thought on Apple iOS Store, even containerized PWA hybrid are prohibited.
No, they're not. What they are prohibited, and if you give me 1 second, I can share the link where you can actually see that. In fact, there are a lot of apps in the App Store that are actually hybrid. I have the link. I need to go back to the chat. There we are. So I pasted in the chat the URL. That's the last information from Apple regarding PWA support. They're not using the PWA term. They're saying HTML5 apps. What you cannot do is update your code from the server. So they're not allowing apps in the App Store that the JavaScript code that contains the behavior of your app is coming from a server. Okay. So, but if your app is contained within the IPA, that's the package on iOS, that's not a problem.
Cool. Another question from Veronica. She has a question about storage persist method. As far as I know, Storage Manager is not available on Safari. Is it valid?
Okay, that's correct, Veronica. So it's not valid in Safari. Right now, that API is not available. And you are correct also in the second part of your question that on iOS, the cache is limited to 50 megabytes. It's being increased to 100 megabytes. But if you think about that, if you don't need to fill your whole app within 50 megabytes. It's just the assets. And 50 megabytes is pretty good for assets. I mean, in terms of your JavaScript, your CSS, your fonts, your SVG, your icons. I don't think that the PWA should need more than 50 megabytes for the assets. Of course, you can download data. And in that case, you have another 50 megabytes for data limit. Yeah, that's a limit. And in terms of the lifecycle on iOS, also Apple released a change recently. And after a few weeks of inactivity, your assets will also be deleted by Apple. So when you open the app again, the assets will be downloaded again. So PWA on iOS has more limitations.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Maximiliana. Another question, what I see, it's Thibaut. You also see yes comments. Question from Alice. On iOS, what would be the best way to authenticate user on installed PWA? Since home screen apps, yeah.
Do not share a storage with Safari app. Yeah, well, that's correct. I think the simplest way today is to use the sign in with Apple JavaScript API. But yeah, that's correct. On iOS, the storages are not shared between the browser, Safari, and between your standalone app. You need to log in the users again. The quickest way to do that is to use the sign in with Apple JavaScript API. And if not, you actually need to sign in the user again. There is a trick. You can send the token, the auth token, through the manifest, but it's kind of not like a good idea. But on some situations, some control situation, that's an option. Okay, when the user installs the app, the app itself will contain the authentication token in the URL, in the start URL. So, but it will have that token forever. That's why it's probably not the best idea, but it's possible.
Rodislav, you have a question? I think you can just switch on. Yeah.
Hello, I have one quick question. Back in the days when we had Java applets or equivalents, there was this eternal fear about security, that this applet can do something to your device once installed. And it impacted a lot the technology itself. So in PWA, are there some fears related to that? The community, is there something to that? I mean, is it secure enough to do the PWA?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. So let's see. There are always risks, okay, and security security problems that might appear. So the thing is that these are web APIs, and these APIs are being discussed mainly on the web standards groups. So most security things are being discussed and they're being attacked, okay, on time. And the thing is, what's the alternative? The alternative is a native app that we know that is much worse because they have full access to everything mainly. And there have been a lot of reports lately. I'm not sure if you've seen the New York Times reports where they received the data from some ad providers and some apps like weather apps where they know your location all the time, and they're selling that data. Well, that's not possible with the PWA. So the PWA is actually more secure because it's behind the umbrella of the web platform, and the web platform has more requirements in terms of security and privacy compared with native apps. So I think it's actually more secure than a native app. That's why I was saying that COVID-19 apps should be PWA. So it's using the open APIs. Everyone can actually see the source code of that, and we can actually see what's going on. And we are under the security of the browser. There will be always bugs and security holes, but more or less it's kind of secure, I think.
Thank you. We have a question from Maxim Salnikov. Yes, Maxim, you can use your microphone, sure. And Maxim, he is an organizer of like Angular meetups in Norway, in Oslo.
Hello,
yeah, he's organizing everything basically. Hi, Maxim.
Hello, folks. Hello, Maximiliano. So great to see you. So great to hear you. Yes, I had the pleasure to have Maximiliano as a keynote speaker for the conference I organized in Oslo called Mobile Era. Yes, definitely want to continue our collaboration. My question is not that technical, but I really want to know, what do you think about browser fragmentation, which is, I believe, coming in more and more strong form. What do I mean? If you check the Fugu project, so there are more than 100 APIs are coming, and definitely not every browser vendor has enough resources to implement all these APIs, despite they are becoming part of web standards. So now all these new APIs go through this standardization cycle. So what are your thoughts on this? Will we get to the situation where we, for example, have first-class browsers and the rest of browsers? How to deal with this?
Well, I've been dealing with this for 25 years, so I don't think this is new. I mean, fragmentations on APIs and browser is not new. So, but in reality, I think it's much better than before. From that point of view, that also has disadvantages on another point of view. So, because today, I mean, if you look at the big picture, fragmentation means Chromium and WebKit mainly. Unfortunately, Gecko, so Firefox, is really, really far behind in terms of users and market share, and also in terms of money they have to support the browser and the APIs. But yeah, we have mainly three 3 engines today, but 2 are the most important, and unfortunately, developers will probably target those 2 only in the future, unfortunately. We have, I think, 2 visions of what the web should do right now in the market. We have the Chromium vision, the Google vision, that it's also Microsoft on top of that. And we can also say that Mozilla, even if it's not using the engine, is also kind of trying to be behind that vision, where everything should be done with a web platform. Okay, the idea of the Fugu project, the idea that everything that can be done with an app should be also be available in the web platform with the security of the browser and APIs. And we have the Apple vision, where they say that they are more concerned on privacy, they're more concerned of content and design and user experience, and not on features or abilities. And Apple or the WebKit team doesn't want the browser to open the experience or the whole app experience to the browser, to PWAs. And that's probably why they don't want to use the PWA term. So I think that's the current situation. It's not ideal. And we can see that situation in Twitter fights, where sometimes people from the Chromium side are discussing, arguing, sometimes even insulting themselves with the Apple team and vice versa. And that's unfortunately for us, I mean, for the whole community, because we don't see one will everybody, and it's a problem. But I don't know exactly what to answer. I think this is the situation. I don't know where it's going, but I see that we have 2 paths, and we actually need to walk over those paths anyway. So it's not up to us. So we just need to deal with it. But Apple will actually be always, for now at least, we're always behind. Any other question?
Silika, you're on mute. Just
yeah. Now I see that I'm muted. Does anyone have questions? And also, the question was about the camera. Does everyone? Okay. I see that now it's fine with camera. Okay, super. If we don't have questions, then wait just a second. Ilya maybe has a question. No? Yeah, there is one question. Don't you afraid of Google will be controlling all PWA applications in the future?
So if Google is going to control PWA APIs in the near future, well, I think they're controlling the PWAs right now. So, so I think this is happening right now. So all the new APIs are coming from the Chrome team, even if they're going through the standard process, but they start with Chromium, and that also means Edge right now. Microsoft is also adding a lot of new APIs, and that's good to see. But also these APIs are going to Chromium first. So anyway, it's part of the same Chromium side of the world. Apple, as far as I can see, Apple is more concerned on APIs, on CSS, on privacy, on defining those stuff. That is also important. I'm not saying it's not important. So I think that both views have their advantages and disadvantages. But we as web developers, we actually need to make the salad with both. And create experience for our users. So I think Google has a lot of control or power, if you want, today. And yeah, that's typically not good for the future, even if we think that Google is a good guy. I'm not saying if it is a good guy or not, but even if it's the good guy, having one person or company controlling the web, it's bad for everybody.
I think that I also have some small question. Why do you think we need PWA for like just usual static websites, like with some information?
Okay, that's a good question. Do you need to convert every website into a PWA? That's maybe the question. So I don't have the answer. Yeah, I don't know if you need to convert, and that has to do with the lack of definition of PWA. So what is a PWA? So if it's just the new DNA of the web, then every website is actually a PWA. That maybe you don't want as an author. You don't want the user to install it. You don't want to offer a standalone experience. But anyway, you want to offer performance and maybe a service worker, and maybe it's a PWA anyway. So and that's the problem of the lack of a clear, concrete definition. So because of that, yeah, maybe we don't need to convert every HTML into a PWA. Maybe we don't. I don't know. But what I know is that there are a lot of apps that we are actually doing with native technologies that shouldn't be native technologies, because it's not working, because it's more money spent there and the experience is not good, and they are just after a year they're just abandoned projects. And Maureen is asking which library or framework has the best PWA support. Well, if we are taking the leaders, if you want, I think that the one that has better support is actually Angular. The support there, it's actually more complete compared from the support that other frameworks and libraries are actually doing. Maybe you're doing, you can add the support yourself or use workbooks or other API. But in terms of containment, which framework is actually containing more developers for PWA development, I think, as Maxime is saying, Angular is the best one.
Workbox is cool. And I just see that, for example, if we look at Lighthouse, then and I saw that some parameters what we have, and it not ask me to have PWA, but like it would be nice if you have it on your website.
Well, it's a category of projects. Even in Lighthouse, there are some things on Lighthouse like best practices, SEO, web performance that you actually need to apply to every project. Regarding the PWA category, yeah, I'm not sure. That's why the PWA category there is not actually counting in the Lighthouse score. So because it's something separate that maybe you want or maybe you do not want. Yeah, I don't have an answer there. So I think it's still an open discussion in terms of if everything on the web should be following the PWA pattern or not, because PWA is just a design pattern. It's just that. Of course, design patterns are not for every use case. And we need to actually find if it's the use case that we want to support or not.
Okay, Maximiliano, thank you very much for your talk. Thank you guys for your questions. It was really very nice and pleasant to have you on our meetup. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we are going to our next talk from Radislav. Next talk will be about implementing static websites. And we, Radislav, can you connect? Radislav, one of the organizers, our LuxembourgJS meetup, and originally he's from Moldova. And now it's your turn.
Hey, hello. Just a quick mic check. You hear me? You hear me nice? Well. Okay. I have one question. Quick practical question. I should receive the presenter rights to share my screen, because so far I can share only my my happy me. Okay, the screen is sharing, and normally it should appear right there. Okay, can you confirm that you just see the screen so that I can start with the talk? Okay, great. So first of all, thanks a lot, Max. It was a really great presentation. It's a PWA. It's a talk that it's a subject that was in my mind for a long time, and you answered like tons of questions in this talk. Thanks a lot. And thanks everybody for this great discussion. It was really, really nice, and it should be nice and continue further. I'm going to give a talk about static sites. I don't know how much you know about it, and I don't know how much you practiced, but I can tell you that lots of businesses today could easily be using static sites, and that will solve lots of issues. Mostly in terms of design, because lots of people are going for funky design nowadays, and yeah. Okay, let's go with the talk. So static sites. We're going to see a quick introduction on what I would consider a static site. So usually it's a site where all the pages are pre-rendered, and before they are being served to the browser. So how they are pre-rendered, it doesn't really matter, either by a backend or without a backend. With a backend, what I mean by that, when I'm speaking about the backend, I'm speaking mostly about server-side rendering, meaning you can have some Node.js application, let's imagine, that is using EJS or VueExpress or React, and it's filling the page with everything inside, just like it will happen in a browser. And then it serves this frozen page that you can cook in a browser with the last little ingredients. As well, something similar we can find in other technologies like Twig or JSP, ISP, and many others. Yeah, we'll get there, Maxim. Not necessarily to Azure, but we'll talk about this right next. So when I'm saying without the backend, here I'm speaking mostly about pure HTML, CSS, and maybe a little bit of JavaScript for interactivity, and that means that when we don't have lots of JavaScript, the pages are super fast to load, like almost instant. And I can tell you that back in the days, I was working for a media streaming company, and there it was an equivalent to YouTube, but in a local area. It was for East Europe, and the main goal of that website was to load, back in the days, a Flash player, the first in the page, even before the HTML, which was pretty much impossible. But since then, I got the taste for quickly loaded pages. And yeah, when you are doing static pages, that can be super fast. Obviously not so dynamic, but you can get a really nice experience. Okay, so we'll focus on the static pages, which are not server-side rendered, because server-side rendering, it's a thing that can be easily discussed in one dedicated talk with examples and stuff like that. If we are to speak about the anatomy of the static pages, usually we'll see three main components here. It will be the technical backend, basically the technical aspect of it, the files, CSS files, some static engines who can generate the pages based on some content, and so on. So pretty much the technical part in terms of coding. Then we'll have obviously the content, the core of your static web page, which is usually the text, the media, and the portability of the content, meaning that you might have some content all over the place, other sites, and you like to move them to static or from static elsewhere. So the content is very important. And another equivalent will be infrastructure, and pardon, not equivalent, but another part will be the infrastructure, hosting, and domain. And as Fabrice said, Netlify. And basically what you're seeing right now, this slideshow is a static generated page, is based on Markdown. It's generated using Hugo. We'll talk about it right after. And it's hosted on Netlify. So technical backend is Hugo, the content is Markdown, and infrastructure is Netlify. Okay, so next, the technical backend, the coding part. Ooh. When we speak about the technical backend, is the moment when you have the desire to throw the computer over because things are not working, you are changing the code, is not refreshing, and you know, things. So technical backend, in my experience, had three forms. One is pure HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the thing that firstly comes into mind, and you are editing your files and just putting them somewhere, and they're ready to go, they're ready to be used. Another version will be your own bicycle generator engine, because why not? We you know, some people have all the time in the world, so therefore they're creating their own engine. And another solution that I will suggest to most of the people will be a static site generator. And these slides are done with that. I'll show you later. So let's speak quickly about pure HTML, CSS, and JS. This is the most basic version. Has a amazing support in IDEs like IntelliJ, WebStorm, I don't know, Visual Studio Code, Sublime. It's just you open an HTML file, you create an HTML file or CSS, and you just start writing the code. It will work right away. You don't need anything in terms of infrastructure. You open that file with the browser, and it just works. It's just marvelous. But because this way you have to write everything by yourself and you don't have dynamic parts, that will be static as well. Therefore, if you go above the 5 pages, you can have really sad experience. So I would definitely not suggest for sites who have more than 5 pages. Okay, technical backend. The version when you decide to go for your own site bicycle generator engine, this is how I call them. It's handmade things that you decide to do one evening and then it takes you one summer. So the greatest part of it is that it offers pure joy of coding. So you need an element, you need something, a link, a button, a panel, a card, code it. You just code it, or you can import it, and you can use packages on, NPM with their packages on with dependencies. It will be fast. You can use pretty much any library. As well, you'll have to solve lots of mysteries linked to code generation. How you'll generate the code, the result HTML. It should be fast. It should be minified and everything. You have to think about importing of HTML fragments and maybe some widgets. You need to think about the content format. It will be text, markdown. What kind of markdown? Maybe it will be ASCII doc. Maybe it's your own proprietary, the one that you will invent yourself. And you have to think about the speed of generating of all the stuff, the parsing of all the content, so that you don't have to wait for the pages to be generated ages. You need to think about the sitemap, otherwise your robots won't find it properly. The SEO, search engine optimization, otherwise it's not coming for free and you have to think about it. The more static, the less JavaScript, the easier the robots are going to parse your website. The more JavaScript you have, the more troubles you encounter, and your site is not going to be parsed as efficiently. And of course, the localization, because your site might be deployed in different countries. So localization is important as well. From other side, if ever you want to display some dynamic data like tables or stuff like that, you'll need components for it, obviously. So you have to solve all those mysteries. And obviously, the more features you add, the slower the platform, your own platform will be. So this can be great for up to 40 pages, but no more. When you're going up to 40 pages, either you make it really great, and then basically you have a not own bicycle engine, but actual product, or you just move to another thing that we can call a static site generator. And here we can distinguish some elements when we speak about static site generators. 95% of your efforts will go to create content. So content means business value. The more you focus on the content, the more you can provide business value to your customers, to your users. That's a very important aspect, because static sites at the end of the day are to be used by the users. If you are spending 2 years doing some really great technical achievements, you'll create maybe a generator, but not a static site. Usually they are coming with themes, and you have a choice between free and paid ones. Usually they are good and bad in both categories. And so one of the problems is already solved, the theming. You can choose, it's faster. So it's great for pretty much any amount of pages. It can be 1, it can be 99, it can be 9999, and so on. It can be really high. Obviously, there are questions to ask at some moment, but you can go really, really high with these such generators. Another aspect of it, usually they come with batteries included, meaning they are coming with SEO, meaning they are putting all the right attributes in the generated code in all the correct places. You have nice optimized pages for robots to index. They have sometimes dedicated templates generated exclusively for robots like Google, Yandex, and so on. So everything works just smooth. You have the sitemaps. The generated pages are super optimized very often, not all of the times, but very often. As well, because they offer various degree of technical flexibility, meaning that some can offer different content like Markdown, ASCII Doctor, and others. Some might not offer anything, and that's very important to consider. Live reload of changes while coding. Most of them are offering you a live reload. And it can be based on in JavaScript, like Gatsby or equivalents, and usually all of them are coming with live reload. Au contraire, they don't have usually the IDE support. So if you have a good IDE support for Markdown files or pure HTML, JavaScript, then for those kind of static generators is like kind of. So what you'll need, honestly, I genuinely suggest you to have, if you do this, I will suggest to use a decent editor and another screen next to you. Just you can have a double screen setup, and on one screen you have the site that will automatically refresh, and on another screen you'll have the editor. Jekyll, yeah, it's kind of okay. It's pretty decent, I can say, absolutely, but there are some moments when you are, I'll show you in the demo. I'll show you what I'm talking about in the demo, because it's really related to the content when you are editing it, but that will be visible right away. Okay, so the third part, very important element, static generators comes in various shapes and forms, and we can identify a special category is the specialized ones, the one that can show you content in a very specific format. Usually here we are speaking about let's make it the static generators for sites where you have design systems, documentation for various code, for various products. It's documentation in terms of like something like Swagger UI or API documentations, but usually design systems, API docs with possibilities to do the requests. So they're specialized, they're still static, but pretty specialized, and very often they are relying on some big external configuration like JSON, open APIs, and stuff like that. And another example will be Storybook and Jupyter. So Storybook is great for design system and components, while Jupyter is great for creating data manipulation, something that they call notebooks. And I will show you the example a little bit later. I'll come back to this slide. Okay, so there is a site called StaticGen. It counts around 283 examples of static site generators. So just go there, and pick your poison. Very simple. The one that you prefer. You have pretty much for almost every language out there. Go, Ruby, Python, JavaScript, Java, C. Just too much to you need to see. But I can tell you that the best ones are usually at the top. It's like the first 10 will be more than enough. You can pick already. Okay, next we have to talk about the content, and because this is the heart of your static website, because it represents the actual business values. Very, very important. And it's very important to note here that creation of the content is one of the most underestimated parts. Lots of people are saying, yeah, the technical part is important. True, it's important. But believe me, when it comes to creating content, you can simply die out there. So content comes in various shapes of forms. One of the forms, the most important forms, is the text format. So you can have here mostly common. You have HTML, Markdown, or equivalents like ASCII Doctor, and just simply text. As well, you might have some proprietary formats, and this is obviously this is what I decided to do in my bicycle experiment, because I wanted to go completely custom just for the sake of experiment. And yeah, I will explain you what I've done there. Yeah, and one of the things with the text content, regardless of the version that you'll pick of your static site, your actual content will be 100% polluted by some platform-specific expressions. And when I'm saying expressions, if you have a markdown, then you'll have custom tags in those markdown files that are not visible or rendered by normal markdown viewers. And this is one of the problems that comes when we speak about IDE support. And if we speak about HTML, you might have a special dedicated tags that you can use and can be interpreted by the static generator, but are not interpreted by the browser. And the browser will see just a simple div, nothing extraordinary. And so on. We can have headers, keywords, various forms of comments, which are not comments, but they're treated like comments, so on. From another side, we have the media, meaning the images, the videos, the SVG animations, usually done with CSS or without, I don't know. And they can be embedded from third-party providers, and or just like basic C4 images and stuff like that. It's raining in Luxembourg, like really raining. Okay, so it can take ages to make content. The media content, it's super hard. If you know how to do it, great. If you don't know how to do it, it will simply kill you one day. It's very, very hard, and you should not underestimate this beast. And I strongly suggest you, if you know a professional for a media content creation, contact that person. Okay, portability. Because we speak about the content and the content being polluted by stuff, and the media content from third-party providers like YouTube and Vimeo. On some static generators, it can be easy. It could be easy to migrate from one solution to another, but sometimes it can be super difficult. And imagine that you are having 300 pages, and the migration process can take you lots of time. So you have to consider that when you are picking a solution, you have to think about the portability. If ever you want to choose to change, so basically, would you want to change? And if so, you have to think about that part. It's very, very important. So you have to do your homework, basically, and do a study up front, do a small R&D, a proof of concept, and then pick the solution. Okay, let me see. Okay, so next, the infrastructure, hosting, and domain. Woohoo, the infrastructure. You know, the infrastructure is the part where the mountains are visible somewhere far, and then you see the sun and some ski guys falling down, and the snow is going all over them, and then you are like smiling and stuff like that. So yeah, the infrastructure is important. And why it's important? Because depending on the technology, is really good idea to pick the right infrastructure. Some technologies are more compatible, some are less compatible with certain types of the infra. So basically, the more complex is your technology, the more complex will be the infrastructure. This is a question, but this is as well a fact. If you are using some static generator that simply works, is simple to use, then it will be fast. If you are using something more complex, then it can be difficult. And more specifically, Jekyll or Hugo. Hugo is a static generator written in Go, and it's very easy to install it. Basically, it's a binary, and you have two types of binaries: one with less and one without less, not less SAS, pardon. So you have one version and another, and it's one binary, and it simply works. While, for example, with Jekyll, it will work amazingly well. But if you are installing some custom modules in Jekyll, they might not be reproducible elsewhere, like on platforms like Netlify or equivalents, and then you might enter into troubles. So keep in mind, the more complex one, the more complex will be the another. Okay. When we speak about infrastructure, we have a couple of versions. One of the versions would be hosting or self-hosted, meaning that you have some kind of server, it's your, or you are renting that server. Nginx or Apache 2. So you might have an Nginx that is serving your website, or some Apache 2 that are serving it. It truly doesn't matter. But it requires maintenance. You have to maintain the operating system, you have to maintain the Nginx versions, you have to patch them, eventually the file system, I don't know. It requires maintenance, and you have to deal with certificates. Obviously, today there are tools to do automatically everything, like Let's Encrypt and cert bots from Let's Encrypt. They are great, but still, you have to know how to do that. Or you have to hire somebody who will help you. And the cool part is that offers complete flexibility. You can configure and tune everything you want, like 100% of the part. And it's very suitable for large-scale businesses, because it gives you full control, like any type of business. It's private, it should be in cloud, it should not be in cloud, it doesn't matter. It will work all the times, but it's the most complex version. And you need somebody who really knows what he's doing there, he or she. Now, another version will be infrastructure like pages. When I'm saying pages, it's like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket pages. And you'll have a URL like project GitHub.io. And please note the HTTPS. And please note that there is no www in the URL. And this is for a reason, because GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, they can give you possibility to have a custom domain. Instead of project GitHub.io, you'll have project.com, yourproject.com. But the moment you want to configure www in front, and you'll ask me, but why? I can tell you that there are tons of people who are still typing it. So you need to have both versions. You might end up having real issues with GitHub pages, for example, when you activate HTTPS. And this is for a reason that GitHub today has some issues creating your HTTPS Let's Encrypt certificates for both www and just pure domain. So you have to keep in mind that you might encounter some limits about that. And there are good and cheap alternatives for personal websites, for small project websites. Yeah, they're not really suitable for building a real complete business around it. You have to consider that. It's mostly for smaller projects. You can do a big business, but one day something won't work and you might have issues. Okay, and yeah, they offer HTTPS. It's via Let's Encrypt, and they have custom domains. Hosting platforms. Platforms like, for example, Netlify. To me, this is one of the best platforms. It's the easiest to use. And this is the platform that is hosting these slides as well. And yeah, true. And Thibaut mentioned the chat. Netlify don't care about what you install as a gem. Absolutely. But if at some moment you want to install some gem that is not available, I know it's available in some custom repository in your repository that you own, then it can be difficult to install it Netlify unless your repository is not published. So you have to consider that what's available in your case in your environment should be available to Netlify as well. Otherwise, it will tell you to go and walk a dog. So yeah, Netlify, amazing. It offers support for static site generators like Jekyll, like Hugo, Gatsby, tons of them. And they offer really, they are coming with built-in CI/CD pipelines. Super easy to use. Like, it's so easy that it takes you literally under 1 minute to set up, to go from a repository in GitHub to a fully fledged HTTPS-powered website with a custom domain elsewhere. And it's super fast, very. Considering that you don't have super custom ways to build your site. If you don't have super funky scripts that are doing lots of stuff and lots of dependencies, just keep it cool, and Netlify will do it amazingly. Plus, Netlify gives you possibility to buy the domains from them, so you don't have to tackle the DNS hosting. That's the DNS editor part. That's very convenient. Okay, they usually offer free plans, platforms like Netlify. In this section, honestly, I will include as well Azure web pages, or even buckets from Amazon. And why is that? Because even though it's not an equivalent, Amazon comes with all the pieces that gives you the possibility with Amazon pipelines, with the buckets to store the content, with the HTTPs, with certificate provisioning and everything. You have to do some things by your hand, but it's more for advanced users, but they still are as a platform. You don't have to configure stuff yourself, patch the operating system, patch the software. It's a platform. You next click in there. So these kind of platforms, they usually offer free plans very often. And there are some tricks. For example, they will give you possibility to deploy only if your repository is public, therefore free and open source, and which is fair. Look, you have a good platform, you have a free website, but you have to give something for free. Usually they have commercial pricing, but this can be difficult to handle. If you are a small startup, the prices can go high really fast. So please consider to again, do your homework and see the pricing of the platform that you are thinking to use. It's very, very important. And very often those platforms are integrated with version control systems. You don't have, you go into the settings, you say that my website is in GitLab or GitHub or whatnot, and they'll synchronize it with the next, and it will be fine. You have to remember your password though. No password, no honey. Okay, if you plan to use a custom domain, it's critical to make sure of those two things. First, your domain seller gives you a decent DNS editor where you can edit records. If it's a custom DNS seller, it's very, very important, because when you have this, you'll need that to redirect your domain to your hosting platform. It's very, very very important. Now, a second element, the deployment platform gives you support for custom domains and HTTPS. So if this platform gives you this possibility, and if you have to check that the platform gives you possibility to have custom domains and to have HTTPS. It's very important. Otherwise, it can be difficult. You might have issues. As I know, Azure gives you this. That's 100% because I've done it. Amazon have it as well. Netlify has it. GitHub pages have them. It's like more of a standard today, but still, you might end up trying to save some euro and by using a platform that is not suitable for static websites. Okay, so domains plus hosting combo. Yeah, today most of the platforms are in a combo, right? It's a good idea to host your place where you buy your domain. Very good idea. Not everybody is offering that, but most of them are doing this. So it's good to have them both because you don't have to set up the DNS. It will be done for you. And it's a good asset because it can spare you multiple hours of debugging. to you or to the person who you are asking to handle this part. Okay, so let's go to the demo part. Hopefully you are not bored to death and you are still have some energy to spend with me. We will go to the demo right now, and we'll take a look quickly at the pure HTML, CSS, JS version. And this demo will be the actual LuxembourgJS website. And this is the LuxembourgJS.com, our website, and it's written in pure HTML. As you see, we have one big index HTML file, which is pretty much the whole website. And we have a theme with CSS, images, and everything that you want. But that's the website. So we have one landing page, in other words, with some widgets and the content is inside HTML. And I'll show you one thing. Remember, I was saying that IDEs usually have real good support for this kind of pure HTML, CSS. For example, I can quickly and easily navigate to things like CSS files. I can control-click on this row class, and I can see where this class is used inside my project. I can navigate to another part, and so on. I will have like lots of support for those kind of things. I can, when I'm using, one moment, I'll find the class somewhere. When I'm using these kind of classes, so I have, to this div, I have attached one CSS class. It will be there. It will be auto-completed. And I know I wrote the code correctly. So it's pure CSS. The editor will find everything correctly. It will be super easy, super fast. And you can have all the complete navigation in places where it can be defined. It's super cool. Believe me, it's easy, but it's very difficult to maintain. So the moment you want to add sections, you want to add stuff, you have to code this in HTML. And the HTML is not necessarily the most user-friendly language for everybody. Maybe you have somebody, a junior or some person who is not very well versed in HTML, but can do some markdown. So you'll encounter an issue. Again, it's about the content, okay? It's about the content more than the technical part, believe it or not. Okay, now next stop will be a custom bicycle. Well, a custom bicycle, it's an experiment that I've done. It was very simple, and I spent not so much time on it. And what I've done, I used here React.js. It's a pretty old version, but it's okay. And remember, I was speaking about the SEO, search engine optimization, about the building of the website, generating of the static pages, lots of the operations that I have to do myself. I had to create scripts and all kind of rebuild the SH, all kind of, I don't know, Docker Compose, Docker files. Docker file will be an Nginx that is sharing this website and is deployed on a custom server. So I've done everything custom just for the purpose, for the sake to see how it will happen. What will be my experiences as a person who is doing such website. So what I've done, I had to create components in the SRC. I had my components part, and I called that basic markdown, which is BM. And I had all kinds of objects, and the moment I want to use something like a BM card, this script is going to be invoked by an agent inside. And if we speak about the content itself, that will be a wiki in something that I call BM format, which is basic markdown. And first line will be the component and then the content. So again, it was super basic for the sake of experimenting to see how deep and how custom I can go, and how much it will hurt if I'll go everything full on custom, but not very well thought. It was an experiment. So it's difficult. If you do it this way, well, it's kind of difficult because you won't have any support, ID support for your custom content. It will be difficult to be understood by other people. It's not very easy to maintain and support. It gives you happiness of joy that you invent another rocket and another bicycle that will fly 5 centimeters from the ground, but it gives you this this idea of how a static generator site is working. And so just to give an idea of the build, this was a build that was generated from the site, and I was having the pages, my index HTML that was generated in this way. And for example, for the rob, I was having a robots.txt file, the sitemap XML generated as well, and for links to be shared through social networks, I implemented something called Open Graph, and this Open Graph part was let me show you some very simple part. Was some kind of HTML that was containing this those kind of tags, everything that is meta and has a property with an OG prefix. So that will be the Open Graph. This is going to be parsed by most of the social networks, and this information will be used to create a small preview in the post. So as you see, everything was generated, everything was scripted, and I had all kind of Node.js scripts that were doing every single one its own part. I cannot be very proud of myself, but I know now how the things are happening inside. I have an idea of how much work it takes to do everything, and it takes lots of work. This was for a simple website, static site. This was a complete Nginx configuration that will work both locally and in the internet, and it will be safe, it will be with certificates when needed, and it wasn't very simple. And as you see, everything was hard-coded, so not even very portable. Okay, now let's go to something that is called Hugo, and it's a static site generator. And as you see, between a homemade bicycle, which is a static site generator, and Hugo, we have pretty much the same idea. We have configuration, we have some static content, we have themes, it's very important, and we have the content. And the content is going to use Markdown. So this is Markdown. And when I was saying that the difference, the support in IDEs is not the best, here is what I meant. In this case, I'm using some kind of headers that are not visible in the version of the site, but they are visible here, and they are not supposed to be visible there. I'm using some custom tags that are working in Hugo, but are not working in IntelliJ for obvious reasons. And this image will be understood by IntelliJ if the image will stay at the root of the Markdown of the site itself, which is not, because this image is located under static folder. So obviously IntelliJ won't find it and will put just a square. So your experience as an IDE developer within the IDE will be like kind of working, pretty much any IDE. For some static generators, it will work better. For others, it will work worse. And for Jekyll, for example, I created the ticket at some moment, and apparently another ticket existed to add complete support for Jekyll and for all the files, markup files that are inside Jekyll, because Jekyll is very used. So a good support will be nice to have. And yeah, so this website in real life looks like this. Like that. So it's a simple website. I'm working on an open source Java curriculum, and maybe one day on a version for JavaScript. But yeah, this is the generated site. And just to give you an idea on how fast everything goes, let me open the terminal. Yeah, right. Go. Yeah. This is the cold start of this website deployed locally. So talks. No, I'm not in the road. It's becoming, yeah. So this will be the cold start of this website deployed locally, and that's it. Now I can open this website on this local host, and you'll see it here. And the moment I'll change something, it will appear instantly, and it will be fast. So just to give you an idea of how fast Hugo is done, how well it's done. And this not only Hugo, Jekyll is fast as well. Pretty much Gatsby is super fast. And yeah, that is very great. Now I'll come back to something I forgot to put an example here. I'll put it, but I'll come back for now to the slide with Jekyll just quickly to show you 2 examples that are very important. Okay, one example will be Storybook. And the Storybook, this is the website, and it's a component to give you that gives you the possibility to create kind of static websites, but for design systems, where you can document your components and play with the components and have the source code of the component in order to use in your project. As a concrete example of implementation of a Storybook will be the Ring UI JetBrains, the company behind IntelliJ or PHP Store. They created a framework, a kit that is working for React, is working with React. And here you have components, and this login dialog is a component, and you have all the information needed for you as a developer to use this component. So you see is like a documentation website, but it's a very specialized. The whole Storybook is specialized to show this kind of things, and it's very good if a company decides to create its own design system. It's like super useful, and you have even things like accessibility, for example. You can have even tests and see if everything goes or if there are any violations with a certain component. So it's cool. Storybook is cool, and it's super efficient. Another version will be Jupyter, and let's try the which one works faster. I'll try maybe Ruby. Hopefully it will load. So Jupyter is something like Storybook. You can generate static sites and stuff, and they have something called notebooks. So notebooks is a scripting file that you can use in order to run a certain application or to do a certain list of steps. And where Jupyter comes in, it offers you a platform that you can install on some server or maybe locally, and you can run all the instructions that you have here. You have a run button, and they are going to be run. So you click on run, you wait for the thing to happen, and hopefully it will happen because it should appear, yeah, right here. So there was an error, but it doesn't matter. Just the idea is to prove the way this static site works. So one example is a classical website like this one, a documentation, pure website that you can use as a blog. So for example, you can have it in a blog format like this one. And it's nothing extraordinary. Or you can have something like Storybook or something like Jupyter. So the static sites and the platforms around them are not limited to one single version. They're super vast in designs, and you don't have to spend lots of money and lots of efforts in order to create a component or to create a platform when you can use something and focus yourself on a business. Business, it's very important. Okay, so I think we can go back to the slides. Not sure if I have any slides in there left, but we can find out. But they love to say there is only one way to find out. Yeah, so that's the end of my presentation. If you have questions, please don't hesitate. We have some discussion in the chat, which I try to talk right away. But if you want, if you'll have some question, just hit the red button. So there are no much questions. That is good because I'll be much more calm.
I have a question.
Sure, hit.
You told something about your students and that you also like explain them some basics of it. What you're talking now?
Students and some basics. In what context?
I mean about this talk, yeah, that you also explain it to some of your students or no? Or just
no, the students, I gave today a talk about technical interviews and how to prepare for a technical interview. But this static sites is not there. I have actually a thing that I'm testing with my students. It's the Java curriculum that I'm working on. And it's a curriculum that is supposed to help you to go from lame to fame. So yeah, it's about that. But it's generated with a static site. So today, honestly, I'm not building any custom homemade bicycles. I'm really focused on the content because I learned the lesson. Content is super important, and the static generator will help you very much. So don't lose time with stuff. Use Gatsby if you love JavaScript because you'll write more React. Yeah, why not? It's great thing. But don't lose time writing your own, unless you really want it. I mean, you have somewhere a feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it also was the same for me here. When some people ask me about website, there are different options. First option, I can do it for money for you. The next option, I can teach you from scratch like HTML and CSS in my web school, Skill Up. And the third thing, if, for example, when I knew that someone wants one website with 3 different languages in Luxembourg, sure, Luxembourgish, French, German, and English false.
So example, localization, exactly. It's a topic that's very important.
Yeah, that's why you need to think really what this person can do. And then if this person wants to learn coding, then yes, you can explain some of this technical thing. And for example, also I explain mostly HTML or some a little bit harder things. But usually, quite often, people here want just website with everything,
like Google. You know?
Yeah, and they don't want to learn it deeply. That's why, in my opinion, that it's better to choose maybe some CMS system even for them, because they put everything there. You just show them where to click and just help them with customization, and also there are a lot of theming. Okay, we have a question from Thibaut. There is also CMS for static sites. Did you try some? I tried Netlify CMS and Forestry.
No, but I tried something, I don't know if we can call it similar. I tried Wix.com, where you can have kind of a website, and it works pretty well. But there is always this moment where you want to add something more, and it's not there. So you are starting to struggle and find workarounds, and you know clearly you don't have any possibility to work it around. While static websites, you have at least the access to the theme, so you can add some JavaScript, you can add some HTML, some dynamic widgets, and it will work. The other CMS like Wix, only Wix, and nothing more. Apart from WordPress and Joomla, but let's not go in that forest.
Just think about your security firstly. Yes, don't do something serious.
Yeah. So one of the questions I think was from Fabrice about internationalization. So internationalization, I call it localization, simply because it's a shorter word. And yes, most of the static generators today, they offer this possibility. And usually how they do that, you'll create folders with specific language. And then in the URL, you'll have that language. And as well, the generators are including a JavaScript file that will give you the possibility to switch and to save this information in the cookies, so that if a person refreshes the page, it will be redirected automatically to the right page for in the right language. Yeah, that exists, and it's pretty easy to put in place. And usually the themes for the static site generators are handling that as well. They are giving you controls precisely for internationalization.
Have you answered already to this question from Maxim about Azure Static Web Apps during the talk? No?
Azure Static Web Apps? No.
Did you try new Azure Static Web Apps service?
No, this one, no, not yet. It's a thing I did not know about it, but I'll take a look. Yeah, I haven't.
Okay. Do you have some other questions, guys? If no, we are going to the end of our today's online meetup.
Yeah, I think I see some discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we are fine. Yes.
Thank you very much. Cool. It was very good, and yeah, we will share slides of talks later in our Twitter account. And see you guys. I hope that it was interesting for you. Always, if you want to help us with the organization, write to us in Twitter and meetups.com or our email on our website. And yeah, I hope that everything fine and stay healthy.
Yeah. And thanks a lot for participation.
Yeah,
Cheers
thank
and
you.
have a good night.
And the last thing that please go to meetups.com and open the page of our event, and then after this event, it will the website will ask you about feedback on the same page. Please, it's very important for us. Thank you. Thank you, Maxim, for your questions and for your participation as well. It was very nice to see you. Okay, guys. Bye. Good evening.